All right, and we are live. Steve, we're back.
We're back, man. We're back.
Wow. Steve, they said it couldn't be done. They said we wouldn't come back, but you know what? You know what we said to the haters? Not today,
We
haters.
proved it. We proved them wrong.
We proved them wrong every time, Steve.
We're back
So,
today, and you're
we're,
showing us some stuff, man. You're going to be the pro
yeah.
presenter, Poppy.
Listen, I'm here's the thing. I'm no pro presenter poppy, right? But, I just want to share a couple things that I do, that I've done. I'm not in full-time ministry anymore, but when I was, I want to share just some of the ways that I used to set up my pro presenter. Now I did predominantly use six, I think that I started using seven kind of towards the end. So I've kind of adapted some of those things from six to seven, but also you're going to be kind of critiquing as we go and showing us maybe some ways that we can do things a little bit better.
Absolutely, man. But I mean, you're incredible. So I'm just going to be learning from you. So let's
Well,
just be
I
real.
mean, you know,
I mean,
yeah. Hey, you know what? It comes around and goes, whatever that phrase is. Uh, so Steve, how is your weekend? How was your week, Steve? We haven't really talked in about a week.
dude. I don't even know what happened last week. Feels like. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's been good. The Super Bowl. I mean, I don't want to get
the
too
Super
far into
Bowl.
the big game, but watched the big game last night.
Sure,
It was an incredible
big game.
game.
Yep. Yeah.
I know that you're anti-football and only
No,
for
no, Steve.
wrestling.
No, no,
So
no. I am quite the opposite. I am a football fanatic.
fanatic. Oh,
We call
okay.
ourselves footnatics.
Footnatics. Gotcha. Wow, you're great.
And I was, man, when that game was going, I was glued to that screen,
Were you
Steve.
really?
Oh,
Were you
every
really? Like, tell me
every
really.
every play,
Bull crap.
every
I call BS on that. So
every moment, every kick. Oh, I was in, Steve. Wow.
it happens like a couple times a quarter. This is funny. Uh, I can tell you're lying. Let's just go ahead and get something that you're not lying about. How about that?
Okay. Steve, you want to ask me about do you want to ask me about my week last
Yeah, how
week?
was your week last week? That's a good
Terrible,
question.
Steve. It was terrible,
That's
and I'll tell you
terrible.
why.
You were in Houston, I think, weren't you?
Yes, I was formerly known as Texas. Texas is now dead to me. So I was in North Mexico last week on a conference with Carl, who is the founder and owner of Church Visuals. He's our boss. And, Steve, we had an unfortunate incident take place on the first night of the conference. So we got there. I got to North Mexico on Sunday. Had the first day of the conference on Monday. That night, Carl and myself, we went to go get some dinner. And while we were at dinner, our car was broken into, and our all of our gear was stolen. So it was an intense week.
Yeah, it sucked, man.
But here's the thing: we're here now, and we can celebrate the path that we've been on, and the fact that the journey has led us to this moment. You know what I mean, Steve?
It's good. I'm glad you're at the spot now. I'm not sure you were there. I'm not
Yeah,
sure that either of you were there a few days ago, but it's good. You guys are moving past it. So
yeah, yeah,
yeah, it
yeah. We made
sucked.
it.
It sucked. It sucked. But
Yeah, it was
that is
crazy.
why we that's good. You know, that is a good reveal
Yeah,
now of why we had to cancel last week. So for all of you
right.
who maybe tune in, maybe there's no one that tunes into us, goof heads talking about ProPresenter stuff and visual stuff. But if you do follow us each week and you were bummed that didn't post, it was because they were at the conference on Monday. We are planning to go live Tuesday, and obviously,
That's right.
when all the gear gets stolen and the only thing that Shake has is an iPhone, it's pretty impossible to do what we were trying to do with an iPhone. So we had to
Right.
cancel, we had to punt, so we moved last week's to this week, and we're back on track.
Yeah, we're back.
We're back
And
on
and
track.
ultimately that's what matters, that we're
No,
here
what matters is you're
now.
safe, bro. Like that's
Yeah,
crazy,
right.
bro. But
Well, here's my takeaway from this incident, okay? Um, take care of your loved ones. Hug your loved ones. Uh, cherish the moment. And above all else, stay away from North Mexico. So that's all I have to say about that. You know what's crazy, Steve? Here's a funny thing. So on my way to the airport before I left Orlando, I normally travel with two headphones. I travel with my AirPods and I travel with my Sony's, which I love both of those. Um, when I'm like in on the plane, I've got my Sony's on because they're wonderful. The noise cancellation, you have one.
Hmm.
Noise cancellation is amazing. They're comfortable to wear. So that's normally what I fly with, and then my AirPods are like my everyday headphones.
Hmm.
It just so happened that on that when I left, I forgot both of my headphones. I forgot both sets. So
So
it's all
thankfully,
about
yeah, thankfully you didn't have
yeah.
those to worry about either. Huh? But
Right, right. Steve, it's about the small miracles at the end of the day.
one other tip. This is an
Yeah.
tip not related to ProPresenter, but last week we
Hmm.
heavily tried to use the Find My Device feature, and I would encourage
Hmm.
people. I'm actually going to be moving this direction for me personally. Is I would encourage you to use AirTags because AirTags
Yeah.
are battery
Right.
operated. They're going based off of other iPhone signals, and so if we had had an AirTag in each backpack,
Yeah.
we probably would have
Sure.
been able to track the bag. Now, granted, they could throw the bag in the gear and keep the gear, but it might help you in determining a location
Yeah.
initially as soon as the stuff's driving away to have cops go in the direction to try to find stuff. So, pro tip,
Right.
AirTags could be a great tool for that. I know for me personally, I will probably be embedding an AirTag into my backpack and to some gear to keep track of stuff because of this experience. So,
Yeah. Here's another pro tip. If you find yourself in North Mexico against your will, probably, um, take your bag. Don't leave your bag in the car.
yep, yeah,
You
good
know.
tip, good tip.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
cool. Well,
Cool.
let's dive into ProPresenter. So, man, the
Let's
idea
do it.
here is you ran ProPresenter for years in a kids ministry
Right.
environment, and so the thought here is to
Yep.
kind of dive into how did you set yourself up? What did you do to create stuff for ProPresenter? What did you execute in
Yeah.
ProPresenter? And then what I'm just going to do is just be enjoying watching and learning. If there's things that I can glean from, because we're always learning. We're always that's part of hopefully one thing that people take away here is that every one of us is learning. Man, we've never arrived. There's things
Yeah.
that I could learn
Right.
and could become better at, and so obviously have that heart of wanting to learn from you and see what you know that maybe I could glean from, and then also there might be some things that you were
Sure.
doing back in the day with ProPresenter that ProPresenter 7 does, and if there are any of those kinds of things, I'll try to
Yeah.
point that out and throw up a question for you on that. So the thought here is we're going to go live and I'm going to share with your screen. So let's go ahead and share to your screen and have you take it over, man, and tell us kind
Yeah.
of what you did and tips and tricks that you used.
Sure, of course. So let me start by saying this. When I first started using ProPresenter, I used to run everything out of my media bin, um, and everything was kind of organized there. I went to a Carrie Job concert one time at the House of Blues here at Disney Springs, and I saw that they were using ProPresenter for as her stage display, her audience display. So I kind of positioned myself right behind the ProPresenter guy, and a lot of what I've done kind of started from that experience. Now, obviously, over the years, I've kind of adapted some things and changed some things. And to be honest, I don't even necessarily remember all the things that he did. I just kind of this is where from that experience, this is kind of where I landed.
Why do you think?
So
That's a one question to start. Why do you think he ran it out of the media bin instead of in a presentation?
man, that was so long ago. I'm not 100% sure. I think when I started
Was
Well,
everything
so
pre-done? Like, was it pre-done animations?
yeah, yeah, everything is pre-done. Yeah, so I really have never learned how to use all the editing features within ProPresenter. It's really not until we started talking about this stuff that I even understood kind of what the potential was. I would always pre-render everything. So whether that's an MP4 or a JPEG, I was just dropping files straight into ProPresenter. And I think part of it is, as I think about it, my first experience with ProPresenter was not ProPresenter itself. It was with Pro Video Player, because
Oh,
my first ministry position, we had three screens. So PvP was what we used.
that makes a lot of sense.
And
That makes a lot of sense why
yeah,
you would fall into that because a pro video player is much more media based driven and
right,
triggering
yeah,
media. That makes sense. Okay.
right. Yeah, so I think that the media bin, maybe I don't remember, it was so long ago, but I think maybe um, it was that I was just used to running everything from just one like pot. You know what I mean?
That makes sense.
Um, but that's not what I do now. Have I've grown in my ProPresenter knowledge, or at least I had, up till a year ago. So let me show you kind of
Here we go. Let's
how
dive
things
in.
work. In yeah. And just so you know, I've used this method in kids ministry as well as in youth ministry,
Sweet.
and I found like it really worked well for me. So the first thing
So
that
you
you'll see
minimize your
when
Skype
we
for
dig
me if you
in,
can.
minimize. Oh, I don't have Skype open.
Oh, well, I think it's showing. It's showing it somehow.
Really?
Yeah, there it is.
How about that?
There it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So the first thing that I want to draw your attention to is the fact that I run playlists, and in ProPresenter 6, that there was a little like there was a little check box to run everything contiguously. Now I think it's where is it?
It's in,
Continuous
yeah, it's in
playlist.
view. Yep.
Yeah, yeah. So one thing that I remember about transitioning from 6 to 7 was that it took me a long time to discover how to
Where to get that
switch
back?
that over. Right, right, exactly.
Yep.
But these are my basic playlists for ministry. I've got a pre-post, which is stuff that plays before and after our services. I've got a main that is essentially kind of not a free for all, but it's a catch all, for anything that doesn't really fit into other spots.
Hmm.
And then I've got a games playlist, a worship playlist, and a teaching playlist. So let's just kind of go one by one so you can see what is in each. The pre-post, this is where I would drop the loop of whatever the series was, or whatever the teaching segment. Now, I don't think, yeah. How do I make it loop, Steve?
So you right click on the media box, hit
Huh?
inspector,
Huh? Inspector.
and then
Oh,
go to
yeah.
the second
Now I
tab
remember.
over, and
Yeah.
then down there the playback behavior is
Right.
set to stop. Yep.
Right.
But
Okay.
here's where
All
it's
right.
cool. Like, do
So,
you know that you can change? Like, go back to that menu. I'll show you. So
okay.
this is where it gets crazy. That inspector tab opens up a Pandora's box of stuff. So click on that same section we were just
Ooh.
in.
Okay.
Scaling, you can scale the item to fill the screen. I don't know if you
Mm-hmm.
can tell that on the
Mm-hmm.
right side there, there's some letter boxes. You can scale it to fill the screen, or you can stretch it to fill the screen, whichever one you want. The alignment, you can align it to be, left or horizontal or whatever. I use that if I'm creating lower thirds. You can flip the
Sure.
items. You can rotate the items, set the playback behavior.
Mira.
But then what's really cool
Okay.
is down here, the play rate, you can change how fast it's
Mm-hmm.
going, speed it up or slow it down.
Really
So, like, you
interesting.
could bring a background in, and I do this all the time. I'll bring a background in, and if it needs to be slowed down, I can just tweak it down to 80% or whatever I want to do.
Oh, that's great. And when you do that, does it start to stutter after a little while?
It will. I mean, it depends on how the video you load in. If the video you load in is at 60 frames a second, you probably can go down to 50% and not notice the difference.
Okay.
But if it's
Okay.
a video that's made at like 30 frames a second, I have found that like the danger zone is 50 to 60%. I've found that I can usually
Okay.
seem to be all right at like 70, 80%. 90% is very, very minimal change. You're probably not going to notice it.
Sure.
But you play it and just check it out. But that's a manual
Yeah.
tweak that used to have to be done in an editor. And now you can just retime it up.
Yeah. Oh, that's real nice. Okay. Oh yeah, look, it fixed it. Wow, Steve, look at you. So, hey, let me say this too, that most of the elements that I'm using are available on churchvisuals.com in our ready-made section.
The Breakfast of Champs is?
So, Breakfast of Champs, I believe so. Yeah.
Eh, you have to get with the action. I don't recognize that, so we need to make sure
Okay.
that's in there. But
Sure. So my pre-post is stuff that I play it before and after service, and it's kind of like over the years I had several videos that I would keep there. So let's say we just need some hangout time. I could throw stuff up really quickly. Now my philosophy as a kids and student minister pastor was that this is the time where I want kids and students to connect with one another, connect with our leaders. But I always wanted something happening on that screen. So here, this is a video. Can you hear the audio?
no, I can't.
So this is okay. Well,
Is it a
this
what's the
is a
song?
music
Music
video.
video?
Yeah, it's a music video featuring myself called "The Color Red," and it's all about spelling the color red. Um, and this was one that was in this playlist when I was doing ministry. It was usually like silly things that I would just kind of have on in the background. I've also used footage of like extreme sports or whatever. Um,
Nice.
and then I would also drop the countdown, and this countdown has audio, but most of the countdowns that I was using was let me just here skip it. Now it's going to drive me crazy. Most of the ones that I was using did not have background music, and I would just run some playlist elsewhere. At the time, I was using Spotify. I'm not 100% sure that is okay to do within the Spotify TOS. But I was a different person then, Steve. So please don't judge me on that. Um, and then next up is the main playlist. Now, again, this kind of serves as a catch-all for all those things that happen within our service that I don't necessarily have a spot for. So I always had the title bumper right here, and one of the things that I would always have as well, not only the title bumper always had audio in it, like just like a quick jingle or a quick bumper like song. Yeah. But I would also have a loop, and then I would have a JPEG. And ultimately, what I wanted was to create a situation for whatever volunteer was running it that they could, if there was any issue, they could cut to any of those besides the bumper, either the loop or the title slide. So they always had an out if something went wrong, if a video started stuttering, whatever it is. And so then in this case, I also had our rules: show respect, love others, participate, and have fun. This is this is this particular slide is like 6 years old, so I've grown a lot as a designer. I would also have our big word. Our big word is like the phrase. This is not for student ministry. This is for kids ministry. It was like the phrase of the morning.
Mm-hmm.
I might also have our announcement slides here. I might have like in kids ministry, if we've got a Bible verse for the morning, I would have that there, so that all those things would fit into that spot. Any questions, Steve? Any comments?
No,
Any anecdotes, tips?
no, I think it's good.
Okay.
I love how you're setting your team up with backup options for success. That's really good. Um, so
Yeah.
that's actually key. I don't know if you know this, but you can right click on a slide with that content. And what I sometimes will
Mm-hmm.
do to even make it even more obvious is like um, I'll put a label on it. So hit label,
Uh-huh.
hit edit.
Edit.
So say this is like the big main point. I might retitle it main
Yeah.
point, and then I'll color it by selecting a color on the drop down. I might color code
Wow.
my stuff. So like if you go to the second, you can color swatch it. So I might color code what my main points are, what my backup things are, and then when you're done, click on the color, then go to enter, and that should change it. So you see that it changed the color of that slide and
Oh,
changed and labeled it.
wow. Yeah.
So I sometimes will
Yeah,
create
that's
like
great.
stuff like that. You can also create groups within like a presentation. So arrangements are used a lot for
Okay.
songs, but they could be helpful
Mm-hmm.
in this kind of situation because you could have your main slide deck and you could have a group
Mm-hmm.
for the title bumper and a group for the sermon content and a group for the backup content,
Oh, yeah.
and it would lay it out
Sure.
it would lay it out in order of what you're doing. So it could
Oh,
be
that's
cool.
interesting.
So anyway, but yeah, I think
Now, you know, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
no, you're good.
One of the things that six had that maybe seven has, I'm not 100% sure, is there was like a logo button up here. So if there was anything,
Yep.
if anything was to go wrong, you just hit that button.
Yeah, so go to your ProPresenter
And
menu. I was actually gonna, I
Pro
was actually gonna try to mention that, but go to your ProPresenter, go to Settings,
settings,
General.
general.
So you can add a logo to this logo
Oh,
section,
yeah. Okay.
and so
Okay. And so
you
then you
can
just
put your
drop it.
deck, if you have that in your downloads or whatever. Um,
Sure.
you can just throw something
Here,
in
let
there.
me,
It's super.
let's see. To go to, uh, how about title here? Title slide. Boom.
Boom. There you
So
go.
then how
So
do
now
you,
click off of
how
it,
do you,
and you'll see over here this
okay.
clear to logo selection shows up
Where is that?
in the right side near the output. Do you see the
Near the
clear to logo?
output. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, great. Okay.
So
Yeah,
that
that
would
makes sense.
eliminate your need to even have that. Like you could just show your team that
Yeah,
that's the backup. You know.
right, right. Now, I did have that for every segment, so
Hmm.
if we move down here into games, you'll see the game time bumper with the audio. I know that at Church Visuals, we typically do bumpers without audio. Um, but before that, I would always have just a little jingle in there. Um,
We
so
did bumpers without it. You mean title motions?
title motion, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha, gotcha.
Yeah, you're right. We do bumpers with audio, right? Um, and yeah, and so games is similar in that I would have the games for that morning if we had any games. Um, but I would also kind of have a couple more games within this playlist in case we had a service go long and we needed to cut to something really quickly, need to fill a couple more minutes or, any of those things. But it's the bumper and then to the loop and the slide. Again, all those things are just kind of redundancies in case anything goes down. And then within the playlist, we've got the game, a video game if that's what we're doing. I also have a game countdown. So whether the game was on stage, whether it was on screen, if it was there at all, we could kind of cut to any of
How
those
did you?
things.
So talk
Uh,
about how you like when you were working with your team, because that's one thing I think that could
yeah,
potentially be a point. Is how did you
sure.
handle letting your volunteer team know when you wanted to move for stuff? My suggestion, and tell me if this is what worked or if you had a different point, but it almost would be to kind of come up with like for main video stuff, like hey, we're gonna play a game now, or
Yeah,
almost having like a code word, like hit it or something that's like when I say that, that's when I want you to roll it. so you don't have to people
Sure.
don't have to guess. Did you do anything like that, or how did you handle communicating with the team what you wanted to do?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, we were very specific about that. Number one, we had an order of service, a schedule or outline or whatever you want to call it, so that everybody kind of knew what segment was up next, and everyone had the layout of the service. And then we also had any like pertinent information. Sometimes we would use Planning Center, and sometimes, but I think more than often we would not use Planning Center. And one of the things that I would teach the team that's on stage and the team that's running visuals. Now, I would do this in like local church setting, but also I used to travel and do like camps and special services at different churches, all that stuff. The big thing for me, because I hated when people would take time to introduce the next segment. I felt like that kind of ruined that moment. So what I would say is when your segment is done, you walk off the stage, and walking off the stage is the trigger for the person running ProPresenter to play whatever the next thing is. And I was always very specific, especially with that ProPresenter person, because to me, that ProPresenter person is kind of the most important person in the room as far as the presentation of what we do is concerned.
Right.
Obviously, this stuff you can do ministry, you can teach, you can share the gospel without these visuals, without these things. But for me as a communicator, I wanted to make sure that we were creating an immersive environment so the kids were hearing the gospel in a way that was as dynamic as possible. And for me, these visuals were a big part of that.
Right.
So I would work very specifically with the ProPresenter person to make sure that he or she kind of had at least some of those basics in place. And the important thing is for me in that process is finding somebody that can handle this role.
Mm-hmm.
It's not everybody that can stand behind a computer and run ProPresenter. It needs to be somebody who knows how to make sure that they're watching what's happening on stage and responding and reacting appropriately.
Right.
And there are some of those intangibles in finding that person that you can't really teach. It just has to be, you kind of have to find somebody with that personality. And obviously everybody makes mistakes. Everybody has whatever. The cool thing, the great thing about kids ministry and youth ministry, student ministry, is that there's a little bit less pressure as far as making sure that the slide is right. If something went goofy, we could always say, "Whoops,"
Right.
I would always say, especially in kids ministry, I'd go, "Oh, it's a Wi-Fi thing," and you definitely you don't want to throw that person under the bus. So you want to make sure that you communicate everything up front, and if you need to debrief afterwards, you can. And yeah, I mean, things happen, and it's funny in that Carrie Job concert. I remember they were playing it like a countdown, and Carrie Job was going to walk out, so they had everything ready to go. Within the last like 10 seconds of that countdown, the the computer stopped working, like the computer crashed. And that moment, as frustrating as it might have been for the people that were running it, for me it was like a complete education. It was like a master class in how to handle ProPresenter, because what they did was they just did not make a big deal out of it. There was a band that was playing, and they kept on playing. The guy who was running ProPresenter quickly loaded it back up, and within 30 seconds they were ready to go again. And ultimately it's like if something goes wrong, and it very well could, you just roll with it and keep moving. There's no need to stop and say, "Hey, can you play that slide?" or "Hey, why isn't that slide going?" All that stuff.
It's a really good point, because I think sometimes we create more distraction by calling out the mistake
Right.
instead of just trying to
Yeah.
proceed and cover
Yeah.
for each other. So we call out the
Right.
mistake, and then everyone wants to flip out. Why did this happen? When there could
Yep.
be a lot of reasons why. So like that's one thing
Yeah.
on the other side of the computer. the computer could have gotten bogged down because we put too much like high quality, like maybe we're trying to pump in too much content. It just froze. Like
Sure.
computers do that.
Yeah.
And one thing that always is asked in those questions is why don't we have a backup? Well, do you want to spend the $3,000, the $4,000 to have another
Yeah.
backup? Some
Right.
churches do, and actually, the church that I
Yeah.
help with on a weekly basis is about to go back to having a backup because they took a backup out and it's caused a couple of issues
Mhm.
where it would have been nice. But you
Sure.
have to pay money to have two redundant systems running at the same time to switch to.
Right.
And obviously, Kerry Job didn't have that in that moment. He just restarted and
Yeah.
started.
Right. Right.
So I think it's a good point to like in kids ministry, student ministry, even adult ministry is, are we in a
Hmm.
spot where we choose to call out the mistake or do we just cover it? And sometimes
Right.
the option is covering it. No one will know. Like, um,
Yeah.
no one will know but you. I have a specific
Yeah.
example where I was at
Exactly.
a Christmas event 7 years ago, and a guy walked out on stage at the wrong point in time, too early, and he cut the band off. And like, if he would have just rolled with it, no one but us would have known. But then he kind of like stopped
Yeah.
and turned around and said, "Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Did I come out wrong?" And like at that point, you've told everyone in the room that you just botched up this whole thing.
Yeah.
Whereas if you just would have taken the moment, like, yeah, we would have all been scrambling, but we were already scrambling anyway because you walked out at the wrong point. So
Yep.
for the ProPresenter people, like just calm, cool, and collected, handle the situation, try to get the computer back up and running. There's even things that we can
Yeah.
do to talk through to help you with that in future chats. But then too, like as a leader of someone on stage, if something happens, maybe try to cover it and not try to call it out and give time for the team
Yeah.
to get it back up.
Right. And especially if it's a volunteer,
Right.
there's people that are doing this task, performing this task. They don't have to. They're doing it because they feel called to it. They love you as a leader. They love being part of the ministry, whatever it is. And so, man, I've seen so many people just get shamed so badly, and it taints their entire experience,
Yeah, and
their
it's a good
their entire church
dude.
experience.
That's a really good point because I think it also damages people from ever wanting to serve. So you could have someone who's got an
Right.
aptitude
Yeah.
for pro, and they make a mistake, and if you crush them in that moment in a kids ministry environment, you could potentially destroy the opportunity for them to even get better and potentially help in a student environment and an adult environment. I mean, we all make mistakes.
Yeah.
I think like
Exactly.
at some point we got to acknowledge we're human beings. We make mistakes. The
Right.
the issue is how do people handle when I make mistakes? If my
Yeah.
arrogance comes out when I handle a mistake, that's probably going to be an issue. But if I take a posture of humility in that moment and don't flare up and try to solve the problem. Or if I can't solve the problem in the moment, have the opportunity to look at feedback and go, how can I fix this for next time? We don't want to squash
Hmm.
those people and crush them because that could potentially diminish your opportunity for someone to serve in another ministry as
Right.
they grow up through the church.
Yeah. Yeah. And as a leader, as a ministry leader, these aren't just people that are working for you. They're people that you're discipling and pouring into and trying to do life with. So I think that a ministry leader is responsible for the people that are serving in that ministry, you
Yep.
know. And Yeah, so that's all part of it. That's all kind of in the back of my head. Now obviously, I did this for like 14, 15 years, so some of that stuff was just ingrained into me after years and years of doing it incorrectly,
Yeah. Right.
so it just we're all learning, we're all growing, and
Yep.
hopefully. So yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Dude, what else did you like when you were setting stuff
Well,
up?
here's something that I didn't do here that I would always try to do when I was setting up ProPresenter, and that is for each slide, I would set the frame to make sure that everybody knows what that slide is going to be.
Yep, that's right.
I remember this weird thing with seven where sometimes the slides wouldn't appear and it was just like blank, but that very likely
Um,
was
I
the
think that's
issue.
if you're using like if you're using an overlay, then stuff will appear blank
Okay.
that's not there.
Okay.
So if you're doing like an alpha countdown, the start of it might look blank, but then the stuff will
Right.
come on. But yeah, people you're
Okay.
just watching on the screen. You go into the media inspector, and you can set a frame to be your image. So if you go right click on
Right.
that, and just walk that through again, Shake, for people. Right click on the
Oh yeah, sure.
content
So
inspector.
content inspector, and then you kind of scrub through and see what frame you want to set as your preview, and then you set it to current frame,
Yep,
your thumbnail.
yep. And
Ready
then that
for
thumbnail will show up as the frame that is going to be on the thumbnail in the actual doc. So that's helpful.
yeah, right here.
Also, while you're there, let me show you
Yeah,
something else. Right click on that.
sure.
You can edit the size of the video, the length of the video. Like you can trim. So go to inspector,
Inspector.
and you see these little tabs at the start and the end of the video,
Over here.
like on the video timeline where you were scrubbing.
Yeah,
You can
yeah,
drag
yep.
that in and out, and that'll cut the
Ah,
video. So where that is
oh,
specifically
interesting.
helpful is if someone gives you a video clip and they only want to show 20 seconds of it. You can clip it in
Yeah,
ProPresenter right here. You don't have to go to some other source editor and do that. If you wanted
yeah,
to, if
and
someone gave you a video and there was 10 seconds of blank dead space at the end, you could clip that yourself
mhm.
and trim that.
Oh, interesting. And where it could help in kids and youth ministry is if you don't have a game countdown, but you have a 5 minute countdown. You could
Yep,
theoretically,
you can just trim it and create another countdown.
yeah, right,
That's the
yeah,
correct. That's the correct. 60-second timeout,
yep,
60-second timer, and just
right,
don't play any music and just um, have
yeah,
music going. Pump it up. So
yeah, exactly.
that's
But
huge.
you could also go to churchvisuals.com and purchase whatever countdown you want. So,
Absolutely. But we
and
only
then
tend to create one a minute or 2 minute or 5 minutes. So if you're looking for something specific, you'll
yeah,
need to do that in our content.
right,
So yeah.
sure, sure,
Yep.
yeah, for sure. And then that basic layout is really what I'm doing, what I'm using the whole time. So once we go to worship in kids ministry, all of our worship was video based. It was all worship videos. When I was doing youth ministry, student ministry, we had a band, so we would have somebody running slides. Now, in my last year of student ministry, our we used to hold our services in the sanctuary. So it just so happened that one of our team members, the person who ran ProPresenter, was also the person who ran ProPresenter on Sunday mornings for in the sanctuary. So she was well versed in like lyrics, so I never had to touch that or set any of that up. And if I had to, I would have been lost completely because I just never had to do that for kids ministry.
Right.
But so worship is the same thing. Have a bumper. I don't have the loop here, but I have the slide, and I would lay out all my whatever tracks, and sometimes I would have a couple extras in there too, just in case we needed it. And Steve, I've got what is arguably the
Hee Haw I'm a
the
Donkey, which will
greatest.
be releasing this
Yep.
week, and on Church Visuals, we'll be getting that live this
Oh,
week. So
wow. Hee haw, I'm a donkey. What I've heard, Steve, is that it's the new church clap. Um, I don't know what that means, but that's it's
Lecrae
just what
might come after you, bro. So
who's who's Lecrae? You know what I mean?
who's Lecrae?
Uh,
Oh, that's funny.
but yeah, that's that, and then and then teaching time. Now this this theme, the Breakfast of Champions theme, I guess I made it so that it said message time, but we used to call it the big story. And again, loop to the slide. Whatever slides I was using, I was trying to find a couple slides, but I for whatever reason I couldn't find any of my old slides. Whatever teaching slides I was doing, if there was a Bible video, I drop it in there. Um, and then we used to end each service on Sunday mornings for kids ministry with a blessing, and so that was a JPEG that I would drop there as well. So yeah, and Any questions? Any comments?
No, I think it's great. I think a lot of this is based on pre pre crafting a bunch. So
Yeah,
when
right.
you run it this way, you just have to know there's less ability to tweak internally into
Yeah,
ProPresenter, because stuff
right.
has been pre-done and built in. So unless you take
Yep.
extra time to bring in a background and create a template slide, like some of that might be harder. So it's just something
Yeah,
to consider as you build like this. If this is how you build, just knowing that when you get into a live environment and something changes quickly or whatever, there may be less ability to do that easily,
yeah.
because maybe you brought
And
stuff in. Um, so that's just something to
I
consider.
I I always had like just background loops, something like this. When I was using six, I was a little more familiar with the editor. By the time I got to seven, I just was totally lost.
Right.
So I didn't use it.
So what could be helpful
I don't
is
think I.
like what I would suggest is what would be helpful for people and for maximum flexibility is if you have that background loop, create another playlist item and call it
Mhm.
backup and put the background loops in there and then create a couple of slides that have some dummy text that's in the font of your
Sure.
presentation. So you can load fonts into
Oh,
your
okay.
Macs, so you can find the font for your theme or whatever, or something that matches close to it or
Right.
whatever. Load those in, and then so you click on the editor once you've loaded that in, and you can actually set up like some slide templates. So you can go to the edit up function up top, and now you can add some
Okay.
text boxes.
Okay.
Like you could add some text boxes and create the drop shadow and create the stroke around it, and try to like you know back up. You can just put back up, and that would be if they, hey, I need you to create another slide instead of saying message title says join us. Well, then they can just go copy the slide and type in the word join us, and it matches what you've asked for.
So just like this.
Oh, you can edit to modify it to match your theme look, but you can change the text size. You can make it bold. You can put a stroke around it, like you have, like
Look at.
you know.
Okay. Yeah. See, this is all the stuff that I've been learning from you that I just would never have done. Can I add like a
So
can
yeah,
I add a drop shadow
you
to
can add a
this?
drop shadow and a stroke.
So if I want to offset, how come that's not doing it? Oh, it's doing it in the little preview box.
Yeah. So
Oh,
it'll
there it
show
is.
once you come off it. Yep.
Okay. I don't have I'm working off of a new computer, so I don't have all my fonts loaded
Right.
in,
Right.
but
But you could load in the font for the actual presentation. You could drop shadow, stroke
right.
it, and try to work it and kind of manipulate it to almost be what you want it to be. Just gonna copy. So yeah, that would be one thing I would consider doing is kind of creating those backup slides to then be ready for if something needs to be like, and that obviously doesn't match, but you would spend more time on it. You might spend 10 minutes and create this,
Right.
like make it look right. But
And
you would have a backup there. You could color it to be matching, the pink and the graphic, So
yeah.
you may not be able to do
And is
necessarily
that
the wave that the text has, but you could at least have something that matches the text and the colors match and all that. So
and can I just look at
look at that. So you
wow.
could create that as a
Can you
backup
animate?
and have that, for. So I would probably create like a backup simple title slide, a backup simple text with multiple with a lot of text so that people have how that could look. A backup scripture slide in case you want to pull scripture, you can have a scripture template set up, and then a backup just a blank slide, and that would set my team up for anything that might happen on an event that we need to actually add some stuff for.
Yeah. Wow. That's great.
Yeah,
That's
man.
really cool.
Yeah, man. So. Well, dude, you blew our minds, man. I love how you're crafting
Well,
stuff for like, and that's a great way to handle and craft stuff to bring in. I think that's an excellent way to do it. The downfalls of that is if you're not planning ahead like you were, and you can't
right.
create that stuff, and that might be harder. But if you can plan ahead and map out your service and your plan and order of service and just export stuff like that um, for the team, it makes it really easy to execute.
Yeah, and that was because of my limitation with the software. I had to pre-render everything. But there were times where you get to Sunday morning or Wednesday night or Tuesday night or whenever, and you're missing a slide. So, I more than once I would create slides on the spot,
Right.
and just render it out, shoot it over through a Dropbox or Google Drive or something, download it real quick, and plug it in. So yeah, yeah.
Awesome.
Thankfully, I'd always have my laptop with me because I guess that is a downfall of this is that you need more gear.
Right. Right. You
So
gotta.
if I had needed this in our conference last week in North Mexico, I would have been stuck.
You would have
I
been
couldn't. I would
stuck
have been
up the
stuck.
creek with no paddle.
Another thing, yeah. One thing that I didn't show, I can't really is that I all of my audio gear, I make music, so I had audio gear there that would play music. I had like turntables so that I could queue up. I was using a software called Serato, which is DJ software that I could play whatever I wanted. And then I also had a little an SPX. It was a little like sampler that I had a bunch of sound effects loaded in so that I could cue whatever I wanted, And I'm sure that's stuff that you can do within ProPresenter, but I just as a music person, I always had
Did you
that
do
with me
that?
separate.
You did that like on stage? You had like a keypad that you reused?
Yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah, yep, yep.
Yeah, probably.
And one of the things that I started doing in my last couple of years in kids ministry, I never really did this in student ministry, but I would make whoever was running audio and video just part of the service, um, so they're not like hiding in a booth off stage. They were up there, and we would just kind of have fun with it, So like, um, and that was a fun way to recover too. If something went wrong, we can exchange back and forth right then and there,
Right.
And I would train people to kind of be the kids church DJ, um, so they could cue songs on my mixer, um, and yeah, man. But that in a nutshell is the stuff that we did.
I love, man, that you like were bringing people along. That's one thing I heard that is really good is bringing other kids along, training them to finding people that are gifted in different areas, whether it's co-presenter with
Right.
computers or DJ or whatever. So be
Hmm.
bringing kids along because your kids will eventually turn into students that will serve in the student ministry.
Right.
And uh, in my experience, a lot of those kids and students want to serve in the big production team in the building on Sundays because they want to be a part of that and they get a
Right.
passion for that. And so it's a great opportunity to
Yeah.
train them there, to start them there, to give them responsibility there, and let them learn and grow into becoming people that will serve your church. Maybe,
Yeah.
and the one example that I have is a guy who I worked with on staff in church grew up in the church and he became the audio guy, went off to an audio school and came back and
Mm.
he's the audio guy for that church still to this day. And he's loved dearly by everyone who worked with him, those of us who worked with him, but also this church loves him dearly and his family. But he came from that
Yeah.
church, grew up in the church, and became an audio guy in his time there, and then yeah, came back and is now on staff. So
Yeah, that is such a fun part, or at least it was such a fun part of ministry for me, and the people that I had in those positions in tech positions were typically like teenagers and older. Every now and again, I would trust like a fifth grader or something to do it, but that was very rare, and it is cool to see them plug in outside of what we're doing in kids ministry or student ministry. In fact, the last guy that I trained to be our like kids church DJ, like became a DJ. You know,
Oh yeah,
he started working the boards that I had there, and then he eventually bought his own, and now he's like he's going around and doing gigs and stuff. So it's cool, man. And it's funny because like he would practice his scratches, and I would say, "Hey, you're not allowed to practice those scratches with me in the room because because it just would drive me crazy." And I love scratching, and that's why I didn't want to hear him scratching because of how much I loved it.
yeah, yeah,
And that just kind of became a joke, and that's what I loved about the tech positions in ministry is that you become like and I mean your whole team ideally, you become like a little family, a little Sunday
absolutely,
morning family.
absolutely, yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah. Well, we're
Yeah.
gonna wrap up. If you guys have questions or want to suggest things we should talk about, uh, I would
Hmm.
love for you guys to drop
Or
us or have
or if you
feedback.
know the if you know where our gear is.
That too. Yeah, if you have an in on it, um,
Yeah.
I wouldn't be entirely sure how you got that in, but if you have an in on it, let us know. ProPresenter at
Yeah.
churchvisuals.com is an email that will come to us, and we'll know then that your questions are about this chat and this opportunity to discuss. We would love to have your feedback about any questions you have, maybe things you're struggling with in your church that we can cover, um, topics you want us to discuss. Um, yeah, anything and everything. Your feedback is welcome. Uh, let us know what you think. Like and subscribe. If you subscribe, you'll get to
Mm.
know when we go live. So if you subscribe to Church Visuals, you know when we go live on our
Yeah. Click
channel.
that bell icon.
Click that bell icon, set it up, and yeah. So what are we going to talk about next? What are we going to talk about next?
Steve, there's so many things we can talk about.
I wonder if we run a poll and see if anyone wants to.
Yeah.
We'll throw a poll on our church visuals page this week, and let us know what you think we should cover, and we'll see what people say this week, and then we'll try to go live next Monday with that topic.
That's right.
That's right. Well, man, I appreciate you, bro. It was fun.
Of course.
I hope
Yeah.
I hope your Monday is fantastic.
It already is because I got to hang out with you, Steve.
And for all of you ministry people who maybe are engaging, watching this throughout the week, we're grateful for you. We're thankful for you and how you serve church. We hope that some of these conversations will just help you as you craft experiences visually to communicate the gospel. What you do on
That's
screen
right.
can detract, can distract, and it can also create opportunities where there's less distraction for Jesus to be the primary focus. And so that's our own goal. So, um,
Yeah.
if we can help you in any way, serve you, please let Shaker and I know in the comments. We would love to help or serve your church in any way that you need. And we hope you have a good week. And we're going to go ahead and sign off, and we'll see you next week.
See y'all.